Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is SUKKAH Daf Zayin. We begin on Daf Vav Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Yesterday we concluded that according to the Rabbanon, a sukkah needs to have at least Shtayim Kilchasan, 2 full-size walls, Ushlishis Afilu Tefach, the third one being merely a Tefach. Says the Gemara, V'oisei Tefach Heichen Ma'amidei. Where will he position that Tefach? Amarav Ma'amidei Keneged HaYotze. Just place it at the end of the wall. So if you have an L-shaped sukkah, as presented in the diagram in Rashi, so you have one wall here, one wall to the side. Where do you place the tefach? Says Rav, very simple. Place it Keneged HaYotze at the end of the wall. It's either here or here. Amr le Rav Kahana, Rav Asei l'Rav. So they asked Rav, why don't you position it in a way where it may appear like it's connecting to the other wall? V'yamidenu, you should position that tefach Keneged Rosh Tur, like a rosh of a tur. Rashi says a tur is a shura, the row in the farm. So the rows would narrow to a point, like a triangle. Some say rosh tur, head of an ox. So it's wide in the back and narrows towards the front. In any case, we're speaking about presenting the tefach here in a triangular fashion, as you'll notice in the diagram in Rashi on top of the Amud. So they maintain that's better. Sure, you place it at the end of the wall, but facing the other wall, to give it the impression like it's connecting to the other wall. So if you have a wall in the back, a wall to the side, that tefach, instead of just placing it flat here, facing nowhere, tilt it, angle it towards the other wall. So it gives the impression like it's connecting to it and creating an enclosure. So either place it here, facing here, or place it here, facing there. Keneged Rosh Tur. Why isn't that required? Shasik Rav remained silent. Apparently he didn't deem it necessary. He didn't consider it important to do this. The tefach is merely like a side post. Rabbi Chananel says it's like a Pesach HaSukkah. As long as you have 2 proper walls, you can place that tefach at the end. It's like a doorpost to the enclosure within. Itmer Nami, we learned likewise. Amar Shmuel, Mishmei de Levi, Ma'amidei Keneged HaYotze, just like Rav, place it at the end of the wall without angling it towards the other wall. V'chein Moirim Bei Midrasha, likewise they paskin in the base medrash, Ma'amidei Keneged HaYotze. However, Rabbi Simon, V'itema Rabbi Shimon Levi Amar, this is an entirely new shita. So far we have 2 shitas. Rav says, place it Keneged HaYotze, just straight. Rav Kahana and Rav Asi maintain you meant to tilt it towards the other wall to give it a triangular impression. Reb Simon and some say Reb Shimon Levi held even further. You can't just suffice with a tefach. You have to fashion that tefach into a semi-wall. How do you do that? You take a tefach, but a bulging tefach, a generous tefach. Rashi explains, typically a tefach consists of 4 finger widths for its boys. But instead of measuring them tightly, lying together, you measure it seichik, like a person who's smiling, generous, open. So the fingers are lying generously, loosely, in which case it's really going to be wider than a tefach. So this is a tefach seichik, which is technically more than a tefach. That's how wide that board has to be. And where do you position it? You can't just place it anywhere. You have to place it within 3 tefachim to the wall. And when it's within 3 tefachim to the doifen, it's lavid. We learned the other day, lavid means it's cancelled out. We view the tefach seichik as though it continues through that gap and connects to the wall. So this shita is portrayed in the first diagram. You'll notice on the right side of the Gemara there are 4 diagrams. The top diagram describes this shita, which is more machmer. You have 2 walls, and the tefach has to be positioned within 3 to the doifen. So you have one wall in the back, one off to the side. The tefach, instead of being placed right next to the wall, as per Rav and Rav Kahana and Rav Asi Shita, he holds no. You have to place it within 3 tefachim to the wall. You have to leave a gap. So now you're going to create a doifen. How's that? Doifen sukkah is 7 tefachim. It's a sheer hechsher sukkah. This configuration will result in a 4 tefach board, which is most of hechsher sukkah, and that's enough. So you have a bit more than a tefach in the board itself, and a bit less than 3 tefachim in the space between. So now you've connected this tefach to the wall and created this virtual 4 tefach wide board, which is most of hechsher sukkah. And that's how you meant to use that tefach. So according to this shita, you can't just use the tefach as a side post and just place it next to the wall. It has to be at a distance of 3 tefachim to create that tefach loved configuration. So this results in a 4 tefach board being created, which is the most of a hechsher sukkah. And now you have a kasher sukkah. You have 2 solid walls, and the third one is just a hashlama. It complements the other walls, being that you have something significant. You have most of a wall. So summary, when we speak about a typical sukkah, which has 2 walls connected, the Gemara is going to refer to it as shtaim kel chasansum, 2 connected walls, a raven, the Ran calls it, connected, attached walls. In which case, we can have a shlishi tefach to complement, to finish up that enclosure. Rav says, you place it connected hayotzei. Rav Kana and Rav Asi maintain, you put it there, but in an angle towards the wall on the other side. Whereas Rabbi Simon, some say Rabbi Shimon Levi maintain that the tefach has to be fashioned into a doifen, into a roiv doifen. So it needs to be a tefach plus and positioned at a distance from that wall within 3 tefachim, which results in a doifen of 4 tefach. Now the Gemara is going to address a different type of sukkah. Omar Yehuda sukkah asuy k'mavik shira, a sukkah which appears like an alleyway. So this is presented in the second diagram on the side of the Gemara. You have one wall, you have another wall parallel to each other. It's like an alleyway. So they're not connected. There's not kil chasad, not a raven. 2 disconnected walls. Ksher, that's also fine. Where do you place the third tefach? The third wall, which is merely a tefach, is placed wherever you want it. So you have 2 walls. You can place it at the head of this one, the head of this one, the back of this one, the back of this one. Doesn't matter where you place it. Rabbi Simon v'Yitema, Rabbi Shimon Levi Omar, they say differently. Here, you have to take that tefach and stretch it. Stretch it even more than the previous Gemara. See, over there, you had an advantage because the sukkah was an L-shaped configuration. It created some sort of enclosure. So over there, you have to take the tefach and form it into a tefach board. Here, they're going to say you have to do even more than that, because the walls are disconnected, don't relate to each other. So you have to sort of create a brand new wall and connect that wall to one of these 2. So how do you do that? You take a board which is 4 and a bit, and place this one as well within 3 tefachim to the wall. Anything within 3 is considered connected and one continuous entity. So you may want to refer to the diagram on the right again. It's going to be the third diagram. So you see a wall on the right, a wall on the left, and a pas dalet, a board 4 tefachim wide, placed near one of the walls within 3 tefachim. So now you have a full hechsher sukkah. Why? So here's the wall on the right, here's the wall on the left. You take a board which is 4 and a bit and place it within 3 to the wall. So the board is 4 plus. The gap is a bit under 3. It gives you a total of 7, which is hechsher sukkah, the share of a doifen. So now you really have 3 walls around your sukkah. Says the Gemara, but why is it that in this case they need a board which is 4 tefachim, and in the previous case a tefach soichik was enough? Why in the previous case we had the L-shaped configuration? Did you maintain that even a tefach is enough if you place it within 3 to the wall? And why is it that over here you require more? A board which is 4. The big difference, says the Gemara. You have more with more what to work with over there. You have an L-shaped sukkah. You have 2 connected walls. Over there you have 2 walls which are connected to each other. That's called kilchasam. Other Rishonim Agoras Da'arevan, they're mixed, they're connected, they're attached. So there's something what to work with. There's an enclosure there. Over there, even a tefach sochik is enough. It's only coming to complement the initial enclosure. But over here, we don't have 2 connected walls. You have a mavui, parallel walls, unconnected. Here you have to do more to create an enclosure. In. So if you have a 4 tefach board, which is placed within 3 to the wall, which results in a doifin of 7, that works, that's okay. Because now you've created an L-shaped configuration. But otherwise not. So again, regarding the sukkah kamavi, you have a wall on the right, wall on the left. One shita maintains, that's fine. It's like shtayim kil chasan, and therefore the shlishi tefach can be placed wherever you choose. At the end here, at the end there, doesn't matter. According to the other shita, even more than the previous case. Since we don't have 2 connected walls, you have to create a connection, you have to create a corner, an L shape somehow. How do you do that? You take a 4 tefach board, place it within 3 to one of the walls, which creates a doifin of sheva, and that's going to be your 3rd wall. Okay, now let's go back to the first case, to shtayim kil chasam, L-shaped configuration. We had 3 shitas. Now the Gemara is going to present another 3 options in the name of Rav. Omar Rav ve'einin niteres ela b'tzuras haPesach. So this is actually described in the 4th diagram from the top. So you have an L-shaped sukkah with a tefach, but that tefach, says Rava, has to be fashioned into Tzuras haPesach. And something which appears like a doorpost, which is applied all over Shas, Shabbos, Kalaim. If you have something on the right, a pole on the left, and a pole running across the top, we call an Erev. So that's called a Tzuras haPesach. It gives the appearance of a doorway, and it's considered like it's closed up, because whatever is on the other side of the doorway is a different entity. It's beyond the door. The door acts like a mafsek, like a mechitza, says Rava. We have an L-shaped sukkah, wall on the back, wall on the side, and you want to apply the tefach. You can't just apply it by placing it next to the wall. You have to turn it into a Tzuras haPesach. You have to split that tefach into 2 parts. Leave a half a tefach near the wall, another half a tefach at the other side of that imaginary wall, and run something along the top. So you're taking that tefach and fashioning it into a Tzuras haPesach. Says Rava, according to this version of the Gemara, according to this lashon of Rava, you have to be machmer. The shlishis of the tefach has to be turned into the Tzuras haPesach as well, in which case now you have a proper enclosure and the sukkah is kosher. Now Tosfos points out, although generally a Tzuras haPesach doesn't need half a tefach pole on either side, even a mashu is enough. He says by sukkah they were machmer because we need mechites hanikoris, more tangible, visible mechites to create the dira. Therefore, in this case, to generate a Tzuras haPesach is something substantial. So once again, the tefach is going to be split into 2 parts, a half of which is going to be placed next to the wall, the other half on the other side of that imaginary 3rd wall, with a kana, with a beam, string, etc. running across the top to create an enclosure. Ikadamri is another version of Rava. Amar Rava v'niteres name b'tzuras haPesach. You don't need both. It's either or. V'niteres name b'tzuras haPesach. You can substitute the tefach by using a tzuras HaPesach. So you have an L-shaped sukkah. Instead of placing a tefach there, just run a tzuras HaPesach over that side, and you're okay. And you don't need the pole on either side to be half a tefach. Why? You don't need that. As long as you have a thin pole on one side, thin on the other side, something running across the top, you've created an enclosure at Pesach, that's okay. So it's either or. Shtaim kil chasam. But the shlish is going to be either a tefach or a tzuras HaPesach. Ikidami amar Rava. There's a third version of Rava, which says like this, very machmer. Utzricha nami tzuras HaPesach. He holds not only are you going to need a tefach. Now Rashi explains that Rava is following the shita that holds tefach soichik, Rabbi Shimon Levi. So not only do you need a tefach soichik within 3 to the wall to create that 4 tefach board, from that tefach you need a tzuras HaPesach stretching all the way to the end of that wall. So both are needed. You need a solid board, so to speak, of 4. It's not really solid, it's a tefach with a lavet to give you a 4 tefach wall, plus a tzuras HaPesach to complete the rest of that daif. So we have 3 lashonis of Rav. Again, we're speaking about an L-shaped sukkah. According to the first lashon, you have to take the tefach, place it halfway here, halfway there, split into 2 halves. Half tefach near the wall, run a tzuras HaPesach from itself all the way to the other side, where you have the other half of the tefach standing. That's the first lashon of Rava. So you need both elements, a tefach which is turned into tzuras HaPesach. To the second version, it's either or. Either you place the tefach soichik, within 3 to the wall, that's okay, or you run a tzuras HaPesach along that side. You don't need both. According to the third version of Rava, you need both. A tefach soichik within 3 to the wall, plus a tzuras HaPesach running from that tefach to the end of the wall, to complete the enclosure. Says the word of Ashi Ashkechel Rav Kahana. Rashi noticed Rav Kahana the ka'avet tefach soichik, v'ka'avet tzuras HaPesach. He did both things. Tefach soichik within 3, plus he added the tzuras HaPesach from that tefach to the end of that wall. Why are you being so machmer? You don't hold of Rava? The Rava of Neteris nami b'tzuras HaPesach. He's referring to the second version of Rava, that either or is fine, either the tefach or tzuras HaPesach. Why didn't you do both? Amalei said no. Anok idich lishna the Rava svirli. I hold the third lashon of Rava, the Amar Rava. Utzricha nami tzuras HaPesach. You need both. Tefach soichik within 3 plus the tzuras HaPesach, and that's why I did it in the manner in which I did. So conclusion, a sukkah needs shtaim kol chasam, shlish is afilo tefach. Where do you position that tefach? So in the case of shnaim kol chasam, which means it's an L-shaped configuration, we actually have 6 versions. Rav says, Keneged HaYotzi, very simple, place a tefach at the end of the wall. Rav Kahana and Rav Asi maintain it has to be Kureish Tur, in a diagonal, facing the other wall. Rabbi Simon, some say Shimon Levi hold, you have to fashion that tefach into a wall. It's not enough to serve as a side post. You have to turn it into at least most of a wall. So you have a tefach plus, tefach soichik, which is placed within 3 to the daifin, which creates a 4 tefach daifin. Then you have 3 versions in Rava. Version number 1 held, you have to take that tefach and turn it into tzuras HaPesach. So split the tefach into 2, half of which is placed near the wall, half all the way on the other side of that third wall that you're trying to create, and run something along the top, turn it into a doorway. Version 2 held, either a tefach soichik within 3 to the wall, or tzuras HaPesach, either one is enough. On to version 3, a machmer. You need a tefach soichik next to the wall, and the fact that it's within 3 gives you a 4 tefach daif in there. Plus, the rest can't be just left open; it has to be closed off with a tzuras HaPesach. Regarding a sukkah kamavi, 2 parallel walls unconnected, Yehuda maintains that's fine. It's shtaim kol chasam. Just place your tefach anywhere you want. Rabbi Simon, some say Shimon Levi hold, Here you have to fashion the tefach not only into a roiv doifen, into 4, you have to actually create a doifen of 7 and connect it to one of those freestanding walls. How do you do that? You create a pas arba plus, 4 plus, and you place it within 3 of one of those walls, in which case now you have a mechitza of 7, and that's your 3rd wall. Continues the Gemara. Shtaim kilchasen. So we know that sukkah can use 2 walls plus a tefach. Now this only works for sukkah. You see, there's a big difference between the mechitzas of Shabbos, which are separators, trying to create a division, a partition between 2 retreats. In that case, you need to be fully enclosed. You need to have 3 mechitzas to create a reshus hayachid. By sukkah, you don't need that much, because sukkah works differently. You're creating an entity, a mokim dira, in which case the Gemara tells us by way of halacha mishmin Sinai, 2 full walls and just a tefach is enough to create that sukkah. So when it comes to sukkah, eating, drinking, sleeping, 2 and a bit is enough. When it comes to carrying on Shabbos, you need 3 mechitzas to create a full enclosure. Here comes a chiddush. Amar Rava v'chein l'Shabbos. Suppose you have a sukkah on Shabbos. You can use even a sukkah which only has 2 and a bit for halacha Shabbos as well. Since it so happens to be that it's Shabbos and Sukkos, migu davi doifen linian sukkah. Since this enclosure is considered an enclosure for sukkah, this 3rd wall, which is merely a tefach, works for Sukkos. It creates a mokum dira. Havi doifen linian Shabbos. It's regarded as a doifen with respect to Hilchos Shabbos as well for carrying. Says Rashi, the first wide line, v'chein l'Shabbos. Even though really Shabbos and Sukkah work differently, but since it so happens to be that it's Shabbos Sukkos, so it's a Shabbos Sukkah, just as it functions for Sukkahs, you don't differentiate. It creates a Sukkah entity. By default, it's considered a separate reshus for Shabbos as well, and you may carry in the Sukkah. Says Rashi, Afal Pishat Tzorach l'Shabbos Sholosh Mechitzis Los Reshus HaYachid. Although typically Shabbos needs 3 mechitzas to create Reshus HaYachid. Shabbos Shal Sukkos. If it so happens to be Shabbos which falls out on Sukkos, Muta Lismeich Al Mechitzas HaSukkah. You can rely on the Sukkah's mechitzas. In Masa Reshus HaRab, Samach Al Pischas Sukkah. If he has a Sukkah near his house, in Reshus HaRab, the Ein Bosh El Shtayim Kil Chasam. Ushlish Zafilu Tefach, which only has 2 proper walls, and the 3rd one is just a Tefach. Machnis Umoitzi Hemena Lebesei. You can carry in and out of your home, because the sukkah is regarded as a reshus hayachid. Likewise, you can carry in the sukkah. For afagav the b'shar Shabbos is lemishri. Says Rashi, although typically this is not enough for Shabbos. For Shabbos, you need 3 full mechitzas to create an enclosure, to create a separate reshus. Inami b'shar mechitzas she'einen shel sukkah lemishru b'hachi. And likewise, even today on Sukkos, if you happen to have 2 mechitzas and a tefach sitting somewhere that are not serving in sukkah capacity, doesn't work for Shabbos. However, the Shabbos, the sukkah sharia. But when it comes to the halacha Shabbos in a sukkah, it works. The migu da tefach agmir rachman mechitzas sukkah the lahav le'defen shlema le'er sukkah. Since Hashem tells Moshe that this 3rd defen, this tefach, works for sukkah, creates a mokum dira to allow eating and drinking. Have a definam b'Shabbos. The sukkah linian Shabbos. It works as well for Shabbos if it's a Shabbos dika sukkah. Amazing. So although Shabbos and Sukkot work so differently, there are many differences between Shabbos and Sukkah. For instance, Shlishis Afilu Tefach really only works for Sukkah, doesn't work for Shabbos. We find another halacha coming up in the Gemara. Oymed merubal parts. Shabbos needs a full enclosure. So if within the mechitzas of Shabbos you have many holes, many doorways, in which case, in totality, you have more breaches than built portions. So it's not oymed more than the breaches. It doesn't work because you're not separated. You're not partitioned. When it comes to sukkah, we don't have that requirement. Even if you have many openings in your walls, as long as they're valid walls, as long as you have that appearance of an enclosure, that's okay. You're creating a Makam Dir, that's enough. Shabbos is a partition, is a mechitza, is a divider. Sukkah is creating a Makam Dir within. It works differently. Still says Rava, if it works for one, it works for the other. You don't differentiate. And therefore, if it happens to be Shabbos and Sukkot, and this is a proper Sukkah, it's considered the Rosh Hashanah even for Hilchos Shabbos for carrying. Says the Gemara, Esvi Abai had a kasha. Umi amrin on migu. Do we really say this concept of migu? Since it works for this, it works for that. Batanya, listen to this brayso. Doivin Sukkah kedovin Shabbos. When something is regarded like a wall for Shabbos, it works for Sukkah as well. Suppose you have sticks, horizontal column lined up next to each other, with gaps in between. Just as it works for Shabbos, or just as it works by Shabbos when you have just horizontal ropes within 3 tefachim, it works for Sukkah as well. Even Sukkah, kedovin Shabbos. As long as there's no gap of 3 tefachim between these poles. Shabbos al Sukkah. There's a chumrah that Shabbos has over Sukkah. Shabbos ain't in a terrace, el ba'imid merubal parts. In order to carry on Shabbos, the mechitzas surrounding the shayachot need to be mostly built. The oimid portion, the built portion, the solid portion has to be more than the breaches. Mashiach b'sukkah, as opposed to sukkah where that halacha doesn't apply. Even if there are more breaches than built portions, if you have 2 walls and a bit, you're okay because you've created an enclosure. It appears like a separate area. Shabbos needs a mechitza, a partition, a true separator. That only works if it's mostly built and it could separate. But by Sukkah, as long as you've created a place which is enclosed, it appears like a place of dwelling. That's okay. Says Abai, my love, should we not learn the brayso like this? Yisera Shabbos to Sukkah on Sukkah, even when it's a Shabbos Sukkah. Right? You have a Sukkah on Shabbos. There'll be a chumrah pertaining to the Hilchos Shabbos today over the halachas of Sukkah, of eating and drinking in the Sukkah. Meaning, if you have a Sukkah which is proper enclosure for Sukkah, but it's more breached than Oimid, more porous than Oimid, so we split the halacha. When it comes to the Shabbos aspect, carrying aspect, it doesn't work. It's not valid. That's a chumrah that Shabbos has over Hilchos Sukkah. My love, should we not assume the brayso means Yisera Shabbos the Sukkah, the Shabbos aspect of the Sukkah is more chumrah on Sukkah on the Sukkah aspect. We don't say if it works for Sukkah, it works for Shabbos. Has a kasha on you, Rava. There's more light. That's not what the brayso meant. Certainly, when Shabbos and Sukkot come together, whatever works for one works for the other. We don't differentiate. The brayso meant like this: Yisera Shabbos the Alma al Shabbos the Sukkah. Generally speaking, Hilchos Shabbos have a chumrah over a Sukkah, a Shabbos to a Sukkah. So typically, mechitzas Shabbos need mostly oimed. But if it so happens to be that this is a Sukkah, and it's Shabbos and Sukkot coming together in tandem, of course, just as it's considered an enclosure for Sukkos, it's considered an enclosure for carrying purposes as well for Shabbos. Yisera Shabbos the Alma, a general Shabbos, has a chumrah over Shabbos or Sukkah. But certainly if it's Shabbos and Sukkot together, if it's valid for Sukkah, it's valid for Shabbos. If it's valid for Shabbos, it's valid for Sukkah. Says Moyach, if that's the case, that when Shabbos and Sukkah come together, you don't differentiate. Listening, Nami, why did the brayso present another halach, another contrast? Yisera Sukkah de Alma, as Sukkah de Shabbos. We find a chumrah in a typical Sukkah, Sukkah de Alma, not a Shabbos Sukkah, a Sukkah, a weekday Sukkah. A chumrah which is present there and not present as Sukkah de Shabbos, when it happens to be a Shabbos Sukkah. Meaning the halachas of Sukkah during the weekdays have a chumrah over Sukkah de Shabbos, over the sukkah element if it's a Shabbos sukkah. Meaning there's a kula when it's a Shabbos sukkah. Because we find a case where Shabbos has a kula over sukkah. And since it happens to be Shabbos and sukkahs, sukkah will benefit from the Shabbos aspect as well. If it works for you, it works for me, and I can eat here. What is that? Because typically a sukkah needs to have a tefach soichik for the third wall, as we discussed earlier. So it needs a full tefach, even more. If you sukkah the Shabbos, but if it's a Shabbos sukkah, you don't need that much. Even a small side post, less than a tefach is enough, because it works for Shabbos. And since it's considered an enclosure for Shabbos, even when it's less than a tefach, it should work for eating and drinking as well. Because you, Rava had said that the kula of Shabbos can be transferred over to Sukkah as well, if it happens to be Shabbos and Sukkahs together. If you put SUKKAH on top of an alleyway, two parallel walls, which has a lechi at the end, it's not a tefach, just a little side post. The lechi is regarded as a mechitza. We view it as though it stretches over to the other side. That's halacha by Shabbos. And since it's considered an enclosure for Shabbos, it's kosher for Sukkah as well. So according to you, that Shabbos and Sukkah are synonymous. When it's a Shabbos dika Sukkah, each party benefits from the other. Whatever works for Sukkah is applied for Shabbos as well. Whatever works for Shabbos is applied for Sukkah as well. Why didn't the Brisa present this halacha as well? That the kula of the lechi applies to Sukkah. There's no need to just present that. Why? It's pashut. Hashta mekilta l'chamirta amrinan. Because once you told me that the halacha of Sukkah is more kal than Shabbos, can be transferred over to Shabbos, which is more chamer. Mikilta l'chamirta amrinan. That was the first case in the Brisa. That when you have shtaim kilchas and shlishis afil tefach, just as it works for Sukkah, it works for Shabbos. Once you've said that, of course, a halacha that's applicable by Shabbos, which is more chamer than Sukkah, can be transferred, can be carried over to the kilta, to the Sukkah, which is more kal. Such as in the case of the lechi mashu. Of course, that's pasha that it works. The koshke, there's no need to discuss it. So bottom line is Rava holds, although theoretically, the mechitza guidelines regarding Shabbos are very different than the specifications by Sukkah, because you're doing two different things. Shabbos is a divider, a partition, a separator, in which case you need to be fully enclosed. 3 mechitzas, 2 and a bit is not enough. Number 2, it needs to be mostly standing, mostly oimet to create a partition. Whereas by Sukkah, since you're creating a malkam dira, you're just fashioning an enclosed area. As long as it appears like a separate entity, that's enough. 2 walls and a bit is enough. Even if it's mostly breached, that's enough. It appears like an enclosure. So they work fundamentally different. But when they come together, it's a Shabbos Sukkah. Whatever works for this, works for that. Guf Amarava. Let's review what Rava said. So if you put SUKKAH on top of this alleyway, which has a lechi, just as it works for Shabbos, it works for Sukkah. V'amarava, yet a third halach, where we see that Shabbos will benefit Sukkah. Put SUKKAH on the 4 corners around the bear, around the well, that's also fine. Because it works for Shabbos, so it works for Sukkah, and you can eat and drink and sleep in there. It says Rashi on top, Pasi Berois. This is discussed by Perek Sheni de Erevin. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Tiru Chacham Mishum Elu Regal. On account of the Elu Regal and their water needs, when they come to Yerushalayim, Chachamim applied a leniency. Last week, Birois, Shebishah Zurabim, Pasin Arbo. So these Birois, it's a plural for Be'er, Bar, in the Shesarabim, they allowed Pasin Arbo to position these 4 corners, these L-shaped corners, around these Be'eros. K'moy Diyumdin. We learned earlier, Diyumdin is du, like in French, du. Aymed, a double post. So a multi-directional post. 4 L-shaped posts around this bear. We give it the status of closed up. As though it's closed up, there's a mechitza running from corner to corner. It's like a Pesach. The Gemara tells us it has to be within the shear of a Pesach, 10 amayis, which could be considered a Pesach, so we view the entire area as though it's enclosed. And we view the bar as though it's filled with mechitzis, surrounded with mechitzis, which allows you to fill water from the bear to draw into the area between the mechitzis. Until this point, it was considered Rosh Hashanah, but now since it's surrounded by mechitzis, it has a separate Rishus. It's considered Rosh Hashanah. This sukkah, says Rav, since it's considered Rosh Hashanah for Shabbos, if you happen to place SUKKAH on top of these on these pasei birois, you'll find even for sukkahs, you could eat, drink, sleep in there. Why? The migud avadayfin l'Shabbos. Since it works for Shabbos, it's considered Rosh Hashanah for Shabbos. Havadayfin l'Sukkah. It carries over to Hilchos Sukkah as well. Although typically, Sukkah needs two proper walls. Right? Remember the Chacham held back on Daf Dalid, you can't just use corners. You can't use the Yumnit for Sukkah. Here it's different. Why? Happens to be Shabbos today. And since these are sufficient for Shabbos, we don't differentiate. It's considered a separate entity for Shabbos. By default, it's considered a proper Sukkah as well. Tosfos points out, although the Gemara there speaks about the fact that the Chacham only allowed it for the Regolim because of the mitzvah, says Tosfos the same thing here. It's a mitzvah. It's a Seder Reis, it's in the Sukkah. And therefore, they allow this leniency to be applied for Sukkah as well. So we have three cases presented by Rava, which we see that we carry over halachas. First case was Shtayim Kilchosin or Shlishis Tefach works for Sukkah. It's going to work on the Shabbos Dika Sukkah as well, for Hilchas Shabbos for carrying purposes. We had a case where he was Masachech on the Mavi, which has a Lechi. Since it works for Shabbos, it works for Sukkah. He was Masach on the Pasei B'Rois, it works for Shabbos, it works for Sukkah. Utzricha. Now, why did Rava have to present the same concept in three different ways? Is there a chiddush in each one? Yes, there is. The Yashmin and Mavi. If only in the case of Mavi, I would say, Mishum de'ikah shteit fanis mal yasa, because over there you have two proper walls, one on either side. That's why it works for Sukkah. Aval gabe pasim berois, the lekah shteit fanis mal yasa, but by pasim, where all you have is four L-shaped corners. You don't have proper walls. Amalei, perhaps that's too much to allow for Sukkah. Had he mentioned that, I would say, yeah, Mishum de'ikah sheim arbat fanis, because it gives the impression of four walls. So although you don't have even a single full wall, but at the end of the day, the place looks enclosed. Standing outside, you see, wow, an enclosed area. It appears, it has the resemblance of four walls, because there are four corners there. So perhaps that's why it works. If you place SUKKAH on the two parallel walls, the alleyway, the lekah shem arbat fanis, we don't have an impression of four walls, and perhaps it wouldn't work for Sukkah. That's why you have to mention that as well. Had he only mentioned these two, I would say, well, mechamirta lekilta. You're carrying over halachas of Shabbos to Sukkah. If it works for Shabbos, and consider it Rosh Hashanah there, it can work for Sukkah as well, which is more kal than Shabbos. It's only mitzvah say. But what about in the reverse? Perhaps I can't carry over Sukkah specifications to Shabbos. Sukkah is more kal than Shabbos. Perhaps Shabbos requires more. So who's to tell you that Shtayim Kilchosin or Shlishis Tefach, which works by Sukkah, will benefit carrying on Shabbos as well? Tzricha, that's why I have to mention all three cases. We connect them in all different situations. We carry over to and fro. So conclusion, Rav introduces a new concept of a migu, in a case where it happens to be Shabbos and Sukkot together. We say whatever works for one works for the other. So you find two cases where Sukkah will benefit Shabbos. If it's considered adequate for Sukkah, it's considered adequate for Shabbos. What are the two cases? Shlish Tafilu Tefach, which is a Sukkah concept. It's going to allow carrying for Shabbos as well. Paratz Murabala Oimid, more breached than standing. It works for Sukkah. It's going to work for Shabbos as well. The same thing the other way around. We have two cases which work for Shabbos and will be exported to Sukkah as well. Sichich gabi movi, which has a lechi less than a tefach, it's considered shesiyachot for Shabbos. Likewise for sukkah, it's considered a kosher sukkah. He was masachach on the pasi berois. Since it's considered shesiyachot for sukkah for Shabbos, they work for sukkah as well. Continues the Gemara, v'shachamasa meru mitzvasa psul. If sunlight in the sukkah overrides the shade, it's possible. Tanarabban chamasa machmasichach. That's only if the schach is porous and results in abundance of sunlight. However, let's say the schach is proper schach, a proper barrier, but the sukkah is filled with sunlight because the walls, the tfanis, are porous. There's no concern there. The schach has to shade, has to shelter, not the walls. Rabbi Yashia Amar Imer Af Machmas Tfanis. The walls as well have to provide shade. And therefore, if the sukkah is filled with sunlight because of the porous walls, the walls are not kosher. Amar Rav Yemre Bar Shlamya Mishmei Abai My Taima Rabbi Yashia. Where do you get this halacha from? The Chsiv is the pasuk by the Mishkan. V'sachoysa ala orenes ha-parechas. Parechas was the curtain which hung as a partition between the Heichal and Kodesh HaKadoshim. V'sachoysa ala orein as a parechas. So you meant to use the parechas as a sakoysa, as a schach on the oren. What do you mean? Parechas mechitza. It's a vertically standing mechitza. Why does the Torah refer to it as schach? Alma mechitza k'schach bein, apparently, says Rashia. Mechitza is like schach. Has to provide shelter. Has to provide shade from sunlight. Therefore, he says, just as a schach has to provide more sail than chama, likewise the mechitzas. Now, interesting, Tosfos points out in Amud Aleph, this that we learned that the poles, the kanim, the vertical poles positioned within 3 tefachim to each other create a mechitza for Shabbos and for Sukkah as well. Says Tosfos, it's not Rabbi Yashia, because he requires solid walls, which provide protection from the sun as well. So he brought a raya from the pasuk v'sakoysa ala orenes ha-parechas. V'rabbanan, how do Rabbanan respond to that pasuk? Ahu the nekev beipurt. Typically, a mechitza is mechitza. It's not schach. Here you have to bend the parechas a bit. The pasuk is teaching you that the parechas should present itself somewhat like schach, like a covering. The nekev beipurt is meant to bend the top over a little bit. The mechzik is schach, which will appear like it's hovering and protecting the oren. Amar Abaye. We're going to have a comprehensive list of many Tanoim who subscribe to the concept of sukkah being a diras kva. It's not just a temporary dwelling, like a shack, which is just used for sukkahs. It has prominence. It appears in its design, in its function, like a place of dwelling. Here comes the list. Rabbi Yashia, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Shammai, Rabbi Lezer, Racherim, which is Rabbi Meir, Kulu Svirlu, all agree, they all hold, Sukkah diras kva bina. Let's go over to Rashi. Over to the left here. Diras kva, says Rashi. How do we define diras kva? Ru'ui l'shtamish kavua. It's suitable for proper functions. V'niras kabayis, and it also appears like a bias. So twofold. It has to serve properly, and it has to appear in its configuration like a bias. Now, Tosfos will point out for us, of course, all these shittas don't necessarily concur with each other as per how to apply the concept. We're going to see in the Gemara soon. But they're all based on the same precept. The sukkah isn't just a diras harai. It isn't just considered a place of dwelling by virtue of the fact that you're going and using it. Just the opposite. You have to enter a Malkam Dira. The sukkah has to present itself as a Malkam Dira to allow use on sukkahs. There are different applications of this concept, as we're going to see. Let's go down the list. Says the Gemara, Rebbe, what do we find that he holds? In these Adiras Kva, the Sanya Rebbe, I remember we learned this earlier, called Sukkah She'em Ba Arba Almas, Al Dalad Ames Psula. If it's less than 4 by 4 Ames, 4 Ames is Makam Shel Adam, as the Gemara in Erevin tells us. It's enough to lie, to stretch. Otherwise, it's not a Adiras Kva. Rabbi Yashia Adamor, as we just said earlier, even the walls have to be solid. It's Diras Kva. Rabbi Yehuda, where do we find him? The Snan, first Mishnah, Sukkah She Gavoy L'Malam Chaf Am Psul. It's above 20, it's possible. because it presents like a diras kva. Rabbi Yehuda Machshir says fine. And then he brings another Gemara as well, which is based on diras kva of Rabbi Yehuda. If you have a bed within a sukkah, you lie underneath that bed, you're fine, because the bed is just a kli. It's a oila harai, and the sukkah supersedes that, because the sukkah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is treated like a binyan kva. How do we know that? Because he's machshir above 20. Apparently Rabbi Yehuda regarded a sukkah as a permanent dwelling, therefore he was machshir even above 20. The more the better, the higher the better. For Rabbi Shimon, where do we find him? The Sanya, Beis Kil Chasam, the Gimel Afilu Tefach. Chacham hold, a sukkah needs 2 and a bit. Rabbi Shimon, I mean more than that. It's to be properly enclosed. Gimel Kil Chasam, V'dal Afilu Tefach. You need to be surrounded by 3 sides, and the 4th one can be a Tefach. That's like the Pesach HaSukkah. Because he holds, it needs to be a proper enclosure. Rabbi Gamliel, the Sanya, he built a sukkah on top of a wagon. Oh, it's moving around, it's portable, that's not a diras kva. Oibresh asfina on top of the ship, where the wind could just blow it away. Rabbi Gamliel Paisal, it's not a diras kva. Rabbi Kiva Machshir, he doesn't need a diras kva. Where do we find Mishamai? It's not Mishaya Rosh Rubu sukkah. If one was sitting in the sukkah, his table is in the home. And you may remember that on Afkim and Alf, the Gemara proved that the Mishnah here is referring also to sukkah size. What's the sukkah ketana? What's the minimum size of a sukkah? According to Shammai, it has to be 7 by 7 to accommodate a table. If it's less than that, Shammai Paislan. It was still machshirin. Apparently, Shammai maintained that the sukkah needs to be roi l'tashmish. It has to be a place which is roi for eating. It has to be able to accommodate a table. A diras kva. Where do you find Rabbi Eliezer? The Snana. Oisa sukkah sekim in tzrif. So this sukkah looks like a teepee. 2 walls with no roof. Or you lean the SUKKAH against the wall. Again, there's no ceiling there. Well, there's a poisel of Shein Gag, it doesn't have a roof. It doesn't appear like a proper place of dwelling. You walk in there, it's dizzying. They say it's fine. Sukkah's there, is that right? And finally, Acherim, which is Shittas Reb Meir. Gemara in Hurry says that they refer to him as Acherim, as a punishment for an incident that happened there. So here we find Acherim. The sign Acherim Aimrim, Sukkah Asuya Kishoivach Psula. Sukkah is configured like a birdhouse, like a round birdhouse. It's puzzle. Why? It has no corners. It doesn't have 4 distinct walls. You walk into a circular shaped structure, it's not called a diras kva. Let's go over to Rashi, around halfway down the Yomit. Rashi begins with the words Shalosh Kil Chasam. Uparshina and Tama Lamachsa Lamister Mizer. This is Reb Shimon. You need 3 proper walls to protect from the elements. What about the sukkah b'rosh hasfina? She gvaya ma'oid. That's very high, because sfinas hayam shein gdoilos. What happens if a ruach bova krata and the wind just blows it away? Or b'rosh hagolanam, you can deny these, since it's moving around. Mis chazike and arai looks like a temporary dwelling. It doesn't give the impression of something permanent. A sukkah which cannot accommodate a table, b'shami poison, the royal tashan shbeinam. A sukkah which appears like it's strif. Can mean strif gagot v'niseh bain ka'echad. The walls and the ceiling, all one entity. Can't kaveris like a beehive. Shein gag nikar lavad v'tvanis lavad. You can't separate between roof and wall. It's all one thing. It's just a teepee without a real ceiling. Oshis machal koisel. I took the schach and leaned it against the wall. Also kanam aruchim. V'samach roish echad mutal koisel. Roish echad mutal oretz. Here again, it's missing a ceiling. The gag of a doifna echad, the roof and the wall, all one. Shein lo gag. Ve'ino ladira. It's not really something which presents itself as a proper place of dwelling. Kishoivach agul. So a round sukkah, according to Acherim, does not conform to the diras kva. It has no corners, has no distinct walls. Okay, let's review today's daf. We started with the halacha that a sukkah needs to be shtaim kil chasam, and shlish afilu tefach. Where do you place that tefach? So it depends what type of sukkah we're speaking about. If we're speaking about an L-shaped configuration, which the Gemara refers to as shtaim kil chasam, we have 6 options. Rav says, very simple, place the tefach keneged hayotzi at the end of one of those walls. The next sheet, to maintain roish tur. It has to present itself like a triangle. So angle that tefach towards the other wall to create a proper enclosure. The next sheet held, you need to fashion that tefach into somewhat of a wall. You need a tefach soichik, a tefach plus, which is placed within 3 to the wall, which creates a barrier 4 tefach in size, which is most of hechsher sukkah. We have 3 versions in Rava. According to version 1, he held you have to take the tefach soichik, or maybe just one tefach. You have to take the tefach and split it into Tzuras HaPesach. So Rav introduces the concept of Tzuras HaPesach to the Sukkah now. We take that tefach, split into two parts. Half tefach is placed near the edge of the L, and the other half all on the other side, at the end of that imaginary wall, end of that third wall, and that's connected to a Tzuras HaPesach. According to this next lashon of Rava, it's either or. Either you take a tefach soichik placed within 3 to the wall, so you have a 4 tefach wall, or you can substitute that with a Tzuras HaPesach running all along that wall. Version 3 held you need both tefach soichik within 3 to the wall to create a 4 tefach barrier, plus you have to continue that wall all the way to the end using a Tzuras HaPesach. Regarding an alleyway-shaped sukkah, 2 parallel walls, unconnected walls, Rabbi Yehuda maintains it's just like the L-shaped walls. Let's take a tefach and place it at the edge. According to the next shita, no. Here you have to take the tefach and really turn it into a wall. You have to take a board which is 4 plus, put it within 3 to one of those walls, which will now result in a 7 tefach wall, and now you have an L-shaped configuration for a total of 3 walls. Rav introduced the concept of mikra, although typically Shabbos works with different guidelines in Sukkah. And as far again as that Shabbos is there to, the Mechitza of Shabbos is there to partition, to create a divider, separate between Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Hashanah, in which case you need a proper enclosure, 3 mechitzas, it needs to be mostly standing. Whereas Sukkah is an environment, it's a mokum dira. As long as it appears like an enclosed area, that's enough. That's standard procedure. But if it so happens to be that you have a Shabbos Sukkah, says Rava, we bring over the halachas from Shabbos to Sukkah, from Sukkah to Shabbos. If it works for Sukkah, for eating and sleeping, it works for carrying on Shabbos as well. And if it works for Shabbos, it works for Sukkah. We have 2 cases, 2 examples to describe each one of these things. So the halacha of Sukkah, which stretches over to Shabbos, is as follows. If it works for Sukkah, it works for Shabbos. Poretz merubal oimed works for Sukkah and works for Shabbos as well. So even if the walls are mostly breached, if considered an enclosure for Sukkah, it's considered an enclosure for Shabbos. We have 2 cases which illustrate the halachas of Shabbos being carried over to Sukkah. You have a mavi, an alleyway, 2 parallel mechitzas, which has a little lechi at the end, less than a tefach. Since it can be used for carrying on Shabbos, it's considered a separate entity even for Sukkah. Likewise, SUKKAH and Pasi B'rois, which are considered a proper enclosure for Shabbos purposes. Ritva says, this type of enclosure is considered Shazayachid, and since it can be used for carrying on Shabbos, we consider it a separate entity, and it can be treated as a mokum dira and a mokum sukkah for eating on sukkahs as well. We concluded with the halacha of chamasa merubim tzalasa, where according to the Tanakama, it's only a condition in the schach, but on the walls, according to Rabbi Yashia, it's a condition within the walls as well, because walls have to create shade, have to provide a barrier from the sunlight as well. And then we're concluded with a comprehensive list of many shittas who hold that sukkah diras kva v'inen. Kol tov to you and atzlacha Rav.